What is up, everybody? Welcome. Oh, look, he's yawning for you there. That's Get ready, guys. This is going to be full of excitement today. Welcome to Dharma Time here on WPSN99.com, where we stream solutions. I, of course, am your host, the Dharma Guy. I'm always joined with the stellar and the apparently tired Dope Doctor.
Very
What's up, man?
good, man. How you doing? Happy birthday, Skylar. What's up, Brian?
That's
How you
right.
doing?
Yeah, everybody. Real quickly before we get started, my daughter, who is up in Tennessee at the moment visiting family, she should be back here on the 20th, I believe. But as of right now, today is her birthday. She is a whopping 16. Everybody say happy birthday, Skylar. And thank you for watching, little one. Hope you're doing well up there, and I will see you soon. But, and I was always, as you can see behind the Dope Doctor there, one of the reasons why we do this here is the Now Matters More Foundation. He is, of course, the founder, and I'm the president. We do our best to help people get into treatment, try to get rid of those barriers, as well as being advocates and just a plethora of different things. Make sure you check us out at www.nowmattersmore.org, or you can call at 833 Now Matters. By all means, check us out. Hit the donate button if you want, and help us do what we do. And as always, you can follow us on social media. He is at the Dope Doctor. I am at the Dharma Guy. We are at WPSN99. And you can also check us out at Now Matters More. So that's I think that's all the house cleaning we can do here. I don't know, man. You're tired. I'm kind of tired myself. It's been a crazy week, dude. I don't know if you guys have been watching the news or not. And for anybody who's aware, we are in Florida, and right now Florida is apparently number one in the world for new cases of COVID. We've had 3 days now of, like, I think it was 11,000, 15,000, and 12,000 new cases in a matter of 3 days. It's pretty ridiculous. And it has to do with today's show, actually. Today we're going to talk about fear because I'm seeing, and I'm sure you are as well, especially if you guys are watching this live right now. If you're listening live, I don't know what your social media habits are. But if you're watching this live, then I know that you're at least on Facebook because that's where we're at. And that means you've probably seen quite a bit of stuff being floated around right now on the internet. And it's all fear-based, right? And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about today is we want to talk about coming from a place of fear and maybe how not to do that as well. What that looks like and so on and so forth. So that's what we're going to talk about today, man.
uh,
I guess I'll start with, what I think fear typically is and what it comes from, right? And this is just my personal definition. I think that most people will kind of agree with it, hopefully. But I think fear is essentially kind of breaks down to two different things. And that is fear of losing what you have or fear of not getting what you want, right? And granted, there's a lot of different specifics that can go in there, but I think they all generally revolve around those two main core concepts. Losing what you have or not getting what you want. And that fear kind of makes us do sometimes some irrational things. It makes us emotional. It makes us angry. It makes us sometimes sad. It makes us maybe not think as logically as we normally would. And I think right now we're in the middle of that. I think there's a tremendous amount of fear being that we're all being stricken with, and some of it is through our own accord, but I also think some of it is through media. I think media definitely. I think sometimes it's easy to forget that their job is to, as he's showing on the camera to stir the pot. Their job is it's a television show, right? Their job is to get ratings. If we don't watch, they don't get paid, and so their job is to make us watch. And what do we love watching more than car crashes? Like drama, fear, things of that nature. If you guys ever watch the news, I don't know if they still do it, but I'm sure they do. I remember when I was a kid, I would always hear this right before the break. It would be like, you know, do you have a spatula in your house? Could you be at a risk for dying? Tune in later to find out. You're like, what? Yeah, I have a spatula. Am I going to die? Like, now you have to watch, right? Because you're like,
yep,
what am I going to die? And then it would always be something really mundane and ridiculous. But the point is, they made you watch. You
yep. The
tuned in
teaser.
because
The
yeah.
teaser.
And so I think right now the news outlets are TV shows, and they're doing a really, really good job of getting our attention. And they're doing that through fear. They're doing that through scaring the hell out of everybody, and firing people up, and as he point, stirring the pot. And then when you go onto social media, it's all kind of the same, right? Because now people are posting stories that they saw and they're regurgitating kind of opinions that they've heard, and it's just this whole thing. And I'm obviously, full disclosure here. I personally think that the more spiritually grounded we are, the more the stronger our internal peace, the less susceptible we are to these fear-based tactics. And so that's what we're doing the show today, because I'm obviously going to encourage everybody to grow more in a spiritual side to help combat some of this fear stuff. But the fear thing, I mean, just to give some examples, and I don't mean to trivialize any of this for anybody out there who is very much in the trenches on this, or is personally affected by any of this. But it is an hour show, and I can't make everybody happy. So I'm going to try to do my best to just generalize it as best I can to give the ideas out there. But the ones that I'm seeing currently, you have the Republicans are afraid that the Democrats are going to win and ruin things. The Democrats are afraid that the Republicans are going to stay in office and ruin things. You have the Black Lives Matter movement. You have black individuals who are afraid that they're being singled out because of the color of the skin. You have white people afraid that by admitting that somehow lessens us. You have the cops afraid that they're going to now be held accountable for things, for genuine, honest mistakes, or they're going to be lambasted for things. When it comes to COVID, you have a whole sect of the population who's afraid that the government is making this up to hurt us. Then you have another segment of the population that's afraid of the disease legitimately, like it's going to hurt us. Then you have the infighting between the mask or the non-mask, and that's because if I'm afraid that my rights are being stripped away to be made to wear the mask, or I'm afraid by not wearing a mask I'm going to get sick. So it's just all fear, and to me that's kind of what I'm seeing a lot of at the moment, of each one of those main categories, if you will, subjects that are in the news that is on everybody's mind. And to me, it all stems from fear. And a lot of it, and you and I talked about this ad nauseum, a lot of it is just we don't know. And that lack of knowing, that lack of concrete evidence, or even knowing who to believe, is causing all of the fear for people, because we don't have, normally, at least I'm used to growing up, and even, in the last several years, you know, uh, a set of facts that we all kind of agree on, a set like standard that we're all like, yep, this is where I measure everything from. But that's been called into question as of late, because now we don't know who to believe. It
Mhm.
seems like everybody's coming from their own agenda, and so now it doesn't feel, anyways, that there's this baseline of facts that we can all agree on. Now it seems like it's a sliding scale, and depending on what perspective you're coming from, will depend on what scale you're using. And I think that uncertainty is causing even more fear for everybody, because we truly don't know. Full disclosure, I went to the doctor today with my wife. We both had some things we had to get tested and things done. One of the things that my wife had done, because she's very high risk, and her job is asking for further documentation and things of that nature to facilitate her reasonable accommodations. And so when, she's already had a COVID test done a while back. She came, she was negative of it. However, this is an example of not knowing. They tested her for antibodies today, and the antibody test came back negative. The problem, though, and even the doctor clarified, the problem with that is we don't really know what that means, right? Meaning some of the tests have been shown to not be effective because the FDA, there was a lack of tests, so to flood the market with tests, they reduced the requirements just a little bit, and then that allowed some subpar tests to hit the market. So right off the bat, we're not sure if they're even, the accuracy of the test. Then we don't know if how long the antibodies stay in your system. So just because you don't have them doesn't necessarily mean you never had it. It just means your body didn't keep the antibodies, because we don't know how long they stay in your system. Um, so basically, we took the test for shits and giggles, essentially, because it really didn't answer any concrete things. And it's very frustrating and very difficult when you don't have concrete answers. And I think that is playing a huge role right now in what we're dealing with, is nobody knows. So, Louis, I've been flapping my gums now for a good solid few minutes. So go ahead and chime in, man.
Well, you said a lot. I mean,
Yeah, I know.
there's a lot of stuff there. I mean, I guess just when you say the word fear to me, I think fear thrives on the assumption that you're in control in the first place.
Yeah.
Um, I think it thrives on that. I think it thrives on that. Not only can you control it, but that you're going to get this expected outcome. And so it tends to breed there because it just may not work out the way you want, and that scares people, which is odd
Yeah.
because it's like when you live in I don't know, in this life, right? You and I live in this life like everybody else. We're no different.
Sure.
There's a lot of disappointment. There's a lot of way things work out that aren't exactly the way you wanted them to or chose them to.
Hmm.
Um, and yet, for some weird reason, as humans, we get so frustrated when things don't work out the way we want them to, as if they always do.
Yeah.
Um, that always just trips me out just a little bit that people get hung up on it so much, to be honest with you.
Sure.
And so uh, I was trying to think while you were talking, like, do I really have any kind of fears? Um, and I guess not really. I guess I always look at it like, I mean, when it comes to the stuff that you talked about,
Right.
the one fear that I did have is that my parents would get sick and I wouldn't be able to get close to them. You
Right.
know, that's uh, a normalized fear from hearing all the stories of all the people that
Right.
got it and then were in hospitals and their loved ones couldn't be near them. I think so. That comes from that,
Right.
that reporting. And there's a lot of reporting like that, and I think that we're hearing a lot of it. Like Mike Maynard said right here on Facebook Live, he said he's not even watching the news anymore,
Yeah.
um, because it is highly negative, and I
Yeah.
think it's even more so negative because we're in this election cycle, and so it's both sides are slinging, man.
Yeah, man.
So both sides, like you said, both sides are pulling their fears out because is that what you want? One
Yeah.
side says you sure you want Trump still, and the other side is saying you sure you want this Biden dude, um, and then all things in between, and everything else
Yeah.
just somehow is within that.
You know,
Everything.
you know what it actually reminds me of? It's funny. It's not necessarily related, but what it reminds me of, where my mind instantly thinks of. And I say this because I'm, according to you, or compared to you, I'm relatively newlywed. And I watch some of these shows on TV about newlyweds and things of that nature. And I've seen them all fall into the same trap. And maybe you guys did too. I don't know. I don't even know if they had those kinds of things that far back then. But no, I remember when I was first married, right? Like in the first year, my wife and I would get into like an altercation of some sort, right? So just a disagreement, and she would say or do something. Maybe she would just be passive aggressive. Who knows? Like she would do something that would bother me, and instead of just saying to myself, you know what? She's upset. She's going through something. We'll figure it out. Whatever. No, my mind immediately went to, well, I can't deal with that for the rest of my life. Like I immediately turned this little 2-second behavior into an eternity of dealing with that, and I would run with that notion of, oh hell no, I'm not going to deal with this forever. And it's like, and it's fear based, right? Because it's fear of in that moment, my own insecurities of just not feeling good enough in that moment. Instead of acknowledging those fears and saying, you know what, those are unfounded. But no, instead I just ran with it, and I got defensive, and then I was like, no, you're not gonna be like this forever, and those types of things, and that's what it reminds me of. Is all these little temporary things are happening, and people are responding as if that's forever.
Yeah.
And like for instance, people talking about Trump, and full disclosure, you and I, neither one of us are Trump or against him. I'm neutral, man. I'm Switzerland in this case, but
Hmm.
no matter how you look at it, we've already had him for 3 years, and we're all still alive, right? Like, and at worst, it's another 4. Like in the blip of time, if we all lived I think the average now is what, mid 70s, early 80s. I think we lived to.
Yeah.
For math purposes, let's just say 80,
Yeah.
right? If we all lived to 80 years old, and you had to deal with him for 8 years, that's literally 10% of your life. It's nothing. it's really not a big deal. But people are flipping out like he's going to be our emperor for the rest of our lives, and it's like, that's what we're doing. It's this weird fear that we have, where we react as if like these temporary things are going to be forever. That's what it reminds me of, man.
But I think even more. It's not even individual based. It's just not remembering that we flip flop.
Yeah,
That things get real conservative, then they get real liberal, then they get real conservative, then they get real liberal, and
yeah,
we kind of bounce between both
sure.
sides our entire lives, have we not? I
Yeah.
mean, by the way, Leo and Lisa celebrating 40 years.
Oh
Happy
wow,
anniversary,
right
Leo and
on,
Lisa.
man.
So he
Happy
was listening to
anniversary.
what you were saying when you were talking about newlyweds. Even I'm a newlywed compared to them.
Not by
We have
much, man. You're at like
27,
30, right?
27.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know. I guess the sad thing is that we were at a party, a graduation party on Saturday, right? And here's a couple of fears that I can attribute to this conversation. So we had masks available.
Right.
Okay, everybody had masks. Masks were available, but the people running the party didn't have them on, and maybe they don't like them, and maybe some of their closer network and their family and friends didn't have them on. So if I saw everybody that entered the party contemplate,
Right.
but because nobody had it on,
Yeah.
nobody did it because there's this bullying that's happening on both sides of this odd feeling of being
Yeah.
on both sides, right? So like if everybody was wearing masks and you'd walk in there, you'd feel obligated to put it on.
Yep.
If you walk in there and there was nobody wearing masks, I felt obligated to not wear it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I kept my distance, as best I could. I was sitting outside, kept my distance. I felt like I did it the right way. But it's that kind of thing. I don't have the kind of fear where I'm worried, like, oh my God, if I don't wear it, I'm going to die. And I don't have the kind of fear that says if I do wear it, it's going to make me more susceptible. I don't have either one. I can go either way
Yeah.
with
Same
it.
here.
But at the same time, I could take that exact same scenario, and if I would have documented it online, like I'm talking about it right now, you could start World War III
Of
from that
course.
conversation.
Yeah, I'd have to agree in the sense of I'm not really fearful or strong in my convictions either way when it comes to mask or not mask. I haven't seen any evidence that really strongly says yay or nay on that one. So if I do, I'm more the social construct. If I walk in, everybody's got them, then I feel compelled to wear it. If I walk in and nobody has them, I feel like it's okay not to. It doesn't change my behavior because I still try to remain somewhat distant. I still wash my hands. And the
Right.
only difference is on or off. That's really the only
Right.
difference. And I think it's important to note, though, like with a lot of the fears that I mentioned at the top of the show, it's not that like, I'll speak for myself here. It's not that I'm immune to these things, these fears. It's not that I'm somehow better than or whatever. For me, I'm just in such a peaceful place inside, man. My spiritual well-being is so put together right now because I struggled for so many years and I worked so hard to maintain that internal peace that I'm good, man. Like these things that are happening outside of me, logically, I understand the seriousness of them,
Right.
but it's not affecting my inner peace. I'm just adapting as I go, and I'm running with it. And like I said, it's not because I'm immune to them. It's just because I'm good, man. Like I'll figure it out. I'll deal with it no matter what it is. I have that confidence of everything's going to be okay. Whatever's meant to happen is going to happen. That doesn't necessarily mean, as we said, it's all going to work out the way I want it to work out. But I gave up on that a long time ago, man. That's how I found my inner peace. It was letting go of that and realizing I don't control shit, dude.
Right.
I'm a passenger. It's my
Right.
job to adapt and overcome, right? It's my job to adapt and accept what's happening around me and respond to it.
Right.
I learned a long time ago that I caused so much of my own suffering through my desire to control the way things were to go or what should be kind of a thing, right? And so I stopped worrying about what should be a long time ago. Now I focus on what is and how do I respond to it the most skillful way I can. And so on the outside, it might look like I'm immune or it might look like I just don't care.
Right.
I very much do. I have a wife that is about as high risk as you can get.
Yeah.
If she
Yeah.
caught COVID, she'd be dead, man.
She catches everything. I'm surprised she hasn't.
Exactly. But I'm good, right? Like I'm not terrified to leave my house. I'm not like I'm still doing the things that I know to do, and whatever happens is going to happen. And like I'm only able to achieve that, not to beat a dead horse here, but through spirituality, man. That sense of internal peace of I'm good comes from my work in that arena. Because
Right.
but I could totally see though if I didn't have that, I would absolutely be on certain sides, right?
Right.
I would be definitely staking my claim on one side or the other. Because in today's world, you almost feel compelled to pick a side if you're not kind
Right.
of well adjusted. I'll say, and even with my spirituality, I still feel the need sometimes to pick sides on certain issues, but I don't allow my internal peace to be affected by that.
Well, the weird thing is that, every individual is pretty much the center of their own personal universe. So it's easy to get this assumption that you are the center of the universe. And there's a lot of people walking around with big, big shoulders with a lot of weight right now. They feel compelled to post a certain thing or to say a certain thing or
Right.
to agree with a certain thing, um, because they're carrying this weight of all the world's problems on their shoulder. And that's like a little bit too much. And I guess spiritually, I know how small I really am and how insignificant I really am.
Yep.
Um, and like I said, to me, I'm the center of my universe. So to me, uh, I am of most importance, and I have to take care of me first, or else I can't take care of everybody that I want to take care of and be there for everybody that I want to be there for.
Right.
If I'm not taken care of properly. However, in the grand scheme of things out there, I can't necessarily push my agenda or my thought process out there because that's a whole different ball game out there. I'm not the center
Right.
of that particular universe,
Right.
and so my philosophy just understands that. So I just walk around with a philosophy. It just says it all balances out in the end anyway. I think balance
Yep.
always wins. I
Yep.
don't think we ever stay teetered or tottered. I think we constantly recalibrate. I think the world has a really cool way of recalibrating situations. Um, like I said, if it gets too cold, ice freezes up till it gets warm again, and ice will melt back. If it gets too hot, water evaporates. If
Right.
it gets cool enough again, water turns back into water. I mean, the world just adapts, man, and
Yeah.
so I just feel compelled to adapt with it, and instead of trying to think so rigid.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, Trinity. I think I know that I'm wrong a lot,
We all are.
but um, I'm not going to know every time I'm wrong. So
Yep.
it depends who I'm speaking with and what I'm speaking about, of how loud or strong I want to voice it. But knowing it's a full choice to get louder or get
Right.
stronger, or to continue the conversation. Because at the end of the day, there is no proof for almost anything we say. There's,
Yep.
I really don't think there's very little things that have proof attached to them. Most everything is theory.
Yeah.
All of psychology is theory. So anyone out there thinking they can read people or read situations, define thing, or know what this means, or know what that says, or I can look at a person and tell you when they're lying, all that bullshit you could say. It's just to make yourself feel better. Because in reality, it's all theory.
Dude, we can't even prove our own existence. Like that's an age
I don't even
old
know what that
philosophical
sentence
debate.
means, but I'm going to go, yeah.
Yeah. Well, real quick, Michael Maynard, man, we're gonna work on that, brother.
What do you say?
He said he wants inner peace.
Yeah, I
It's
like it.
achievable. It really is. I think we all do. I think everybody wants inner peace. I just think we sometimes get confused on how to go about achieving that, and not only that, we sometimes confuse what that really looks like.
I was going to say, it's like, I don't know if you can relate to this. Maybe you can. But when you first do a substance that you don't really know what to expect, especially because I did them very young. So I did substances very young. So there's really no reference point of how it was going to feel.
Right.
So I didn't know when I was feeling it yet until I felt it. And then once I was in it, then I go, oh, this must be it.
Yeah. Right.
But what I'm saying is all the time prior to getting it, you don't know how long it's going to take to get there. And unfortunately, a lot of people can't wait that out. If it's not immediate,
Yeah.
so they do it again and again and again and again and again because they want that immediate, and then all of a sudden it all hits at once.
Sure.
So here's my thing to what Maynard said. You may be searching for inner peace, but it may already be in the making and already be present. You just don't really even know it's there because you're seeking it out too much. When really sometimes all you have to do is just sit back and be like, am I comfortable in my skin? Am I okay with me, regardless? Yes. Am I okay with those that I love? And this doesn't mean that you're okay with everybody's decisions, and this doesn't mean that you're okay with everything about yourself. You could always be working on something about yourself, and you could always be dealing with something that someone's struggling with in your life or your family. That doesn't mean you're not having inner peace. The inner peace really means that you are accepting that you're not in control, and the outcomes are going to happen as they may, and you're not going to let it affect your world like that song Across the Universe for the Beatles. Nothing's going to change my world. And I love that song strictly because of that line. If you don't allow nothing to change your world, that it's just going to be what it is. Now I'm going to get happy, I'm going to get upset, I'm going to get sad, I'm going to have all these emotions, but at the end of the day, I'm going to recalibrate back to center. Then you probably have inner peace. You just don't know you have it.
Yeah, I would say that addressing that same comment, I would say it really does come down to your definition of what inner peace is, right? Like
Right.
we'll use the definition of success. looking at my life right now from the lens of a 19-year-old, I'm a complete failure.
Mhm.
At 19, dude, if you told me this was my life, I would have slapped you. Like, to me, I would have been so rude and so condescending and just, I would have ripped up the life that I currently have right now. I would have obliterated whoever that was, and I would have been an arrogant little shit about it as well. However, now where I'm at, through my perspective, I'm winning, man. I'm winning in such a big way. And nothing's changed other than my definition and my perspective of it, right? And so when it comes to inner peace, if your definition of inner peace is just happy all the time and running around at a 10, you're never going to find it. That doesn't exist. Inner peace is like a 5, man. Inner peace is right smack dab in the middle. And the way I typically try to explain it to people is inner peace, happiness is so much closer to acceptance than it is to pleasure, right? And we all have it every day. You just don't pay attention to it because you're so focused about getting your next fix of pleasure or avoiding your next bout of pain. But we all have it every day. You just don't pay attention to them. If you're, taking a shower, you're sitting home on the toilet. I don't care. There's got to be a moment in your day when you're just good, right? There's a moment in everybody's day when you're not focused on what you don't have. You're not worried about this. You're not complaining about that. You're just, I'm good. I'm good right now, man. Like, I'm all right. I'm totally fine. That is inner peace, where you're just good. And then knowing that all the time. Because no matter what happens around you, it's a state of mind. It's a state of, I'm okay. I'll deal
Yeah.
with whatever it is. I'm going to accept what's around me. I'll respond to it. But at the end of the day, I'm good, man. And for me personally, one of the biggest lessons I've ever had to learn in my life that was hold me back so much from my inner peace. And based upon the postings that I see, based upon the video clips that I see on the news and all these people in the streets and everything else, I got a sneaky suspicion I'm not the only one struggling with it. And that is, you could be right or you could be happy. That was the hardest lesson for me to learn in my entire life. I am a very right individual. I am all about right. If I've got the facts, if I've got the things to back up my argument, I am right. And I will argue to the end of the day. And then sometime I'll wake up tomorrow and continue to argue if I know I'm right. But at the end of the day, I want to be happy. That means so much more important to me, so much more to me, because when it comes to right, the problem with right is, and if anybody else out there can relate to this, you'll understand what I'm about to say, and that is, it's exhausting, man, because there's always another right. No matter how right you were in this instant, there's another one right behind it, and you gotta put the combat boots right back on and go right back to war, because it's a never-ending process. And if you're in the middle of a right fight, you don't remember how right you were in the last fight because you're all in this one. So it's just this constant chasing of your tail. To whereas when you focus on being happy, it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. Here's an example I'll use, and I'll try to be as vague as I can to leave everybody who is involved out. There was an individual who I had history with, and we were fighting and debating about certain things. And then we made a decision that I'm not going to talk to you anymore. We're not going to be friends anymore. And then this person would text me every now and then with a scenario. And in my mind, the scenario was so wrong that I would sit there and correct them via text. Like, what the hell are you talking about? That's not what happened. This is what happened, blah, blah, blah. And then one day it clicked. One day I was like, why do I care? Why am I fighting so hard to correct this person when I don't even talk to them anymore? I'm not even, who cares? Why do I give a shit if that's how their mindset is? If they want to walk around thinking that, why do I care so much? And so what I did was, and this is my okay practice, and I urge anybody who's struggling with this to do this. I reminded myself of, or I remembered the Fight Club when he told them all go out there and pick a fight and lose. So what I did was, when I was next time this interaction came up, instead of me feeling the need to go in and correct, very simply, okay. That's all I said was okay. And it was the hardest thing because of fear, right? Because I was afraid of what's going to happen if I don't correct this person. What's going to happen if I don't let them know how wrong they are right now? Like, what's going to happen if they're walking around thinking that they're right and they're telling other people that they're right and I don't stop that? What's going to happen? And you know what the
Mhm.
weirdest thing that happened? Nothing. Nothing happened. The only difference was when I got done with that text conversation, I wasn't all hyped up and ready to punch a wall or hit somebody. I walked away from that conversation, what's for dinner? Like, I just didn't care. It didn't bother me. It wasn't even on my radar anymore. And the only difference was I gave up on being right. I just want to be happy. And
Right.
I didn't want to walk away because, think about it. When was the last time anybody here was in a heated debate, be it in person or on, Facebook or wherever you have them at, and you're in the middle of the argument and you're telling somebody how wrong they are, and your name calling, and you're getting all hyped up, and the other person, not being sarcastic, but legitimately is like, "Oh my God,
You're
I
right.
never thought about it that way. You're so right. Thank you so much for correcting me." Never in the history of man has that ever
Nope.
happened, and it's not going to. And so I had to stop and think about that. I was like, dude, I'm doing this to myself. Like I want to be happy. I don't want to be right. Sometimes I am right, and sometimes I'm not. And when I am, I celebrate those moments. When I'm not, I learn from them. But at the end of the day, I'm always going to be happy because I'm not focused on that right. And so to me, for me personally, that was my key to inner peace. And I see that happening right now. Every time I turn on the news, every time I see a clip, it's people arguing about right. Should you wear the mask? Should you not wear the mask? Does Black Lives Matter? Do all lives matter? Is Trump right or is he wrong? All this stuff is about being right. It's about feeling justified. It's about feeling content and I'm right. And how's that working for you? I'm gonna tell you, it's probably not working very well. And if it does work well in that moment, I bet you it's followed up by another moment that it's not. To whereas if you start with the place of I'm good either way, man, then you'll start to notice. And it's not an overnight thing, man. And I'm talking to you specifically. It isn't an overnight thing, bro. I was a miserable shit, dude. I hated it. I was so miserable, and it wasn't an overnight thing. I just started doing what I knew intellectually to be right, and then I just noticed over time, I cared less and less about being right, and I cared more about being happy. And then I look back at one point. It was like years later, and I'm like, damn, like I've never really been pissed. Like I don't even remember what it's like to stir up that negative emotion and energy anymore to get hyped up in situations where I should get hyped up right now. It's just not even in me anymore. I'm not that person. And it's not because that person necessarily went away. It's because my mindset changed and I've got that inner peace now. And that's why I'm not susceptible to some of the fear mongering that's happening right now. That's why I'm not afraid to leave my house. I'm not afraid when I see somebody with a mask or without a mask. I'm not afraid if the cop pulls me over. I'm not afraid to have debates with people. I'm not afraid of any of that because I know at the end of the day, man, my inner peace, it's not going anywhere, man. Because I care more about being happy than being right. And I think that's a huge, huge, huge thing for so many people. And that's why I recommend the OK practice. The OK practice. And I got to preface this because I had a student one time who did the OK practice, supposedly, but then went ahead and posted online later on, ranting and raving and getting her validation there. And that's not what I mean, right? The OK practice needs to be genuine. It's not a power tactic. It's not a power play to get the power and end. No, no, no. Genuinely lose. Walk away making that person think that you genuinely agree with them and they are 100% right. And then, like I said, you'll notice that nothing happens. That you'll still wake up the next day. Whatever bills are due are still going to be due. You're still going to have to eat. You're going to have to sleep. You're going to have to do your whole life will be the same. The difference is you didn't walk away from that engagement upset and pissed off at the world. That's all I got on that one. From a drop a mic or something or what?
I'm just sitting here listening like everybody else, man. I like it. I think it's right, man. I think it's all right. And by the way, if anyone does do that okay technique, also don't say it very sarcastically.
Well, that's what I mean.
Okay,
It's got to be genuine.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. It
Don't do
can't
it
be
like that.
a fighting technique.
But no, I mean, I was thinking a lot of things, as you were speaking. I don't know which one really, but so when you're speaking to somebody, like in Maynard's case, it's saying, he wants to be happy, that he's working on it. I like that you spoke directly to him. I like when people engage with whatever we're talking about so that we can kind of
Yeah,
make
man.
it specifically and tailor-made for whoever needs to hear it today or whoever wants to talk about it that day. One thing that I would say on this whole scenario is I didn't necessarily have the same journey as you did on this, other than I did realize that I was occupying a lot of my headspace with a lot of resentment and a lot of anger and a lot of I had a list in my head. I had a list, and I had I would sit and imagine what I was going to do to the people on this list, and I allowed it to feel really good. And so I didn't have to take responsibility for changing my day-to-day behavior or my day-to-day thought process, because as long as I felt compelled to believe that what I was thinking was correct, and that my viewpoint was correct, and that they were wrong, and that they had wronged me, and I was a victim. And as long as I sat in that spot, then they had to make all the changes, and I had to do nothing. And I was just real fortunate that here's where drug use like helped early on.
The views and opinions expressed by
Just me alone. Because what drug use does is it takes you in a different mindset, whether regardless of where you were going in the first place. Sometimes, right? So what I would did is when I learned meditation and when I learned how to just sit there with myself and with my thoughts, I would make myself high in my thought, if that means anything. So the positive thing is I was able to go wherever I kind of wanted to go with like the music that I would play, and it would just take me along. And then what I realized was, at the end of the day, nothing really matters. You know what really matters is where I'm sitting right now, right here. Like I'm talking to you right now. We're talking with Maynard. We're talking with Marissa. We're talking with Enrique. We're talking with these individuals right now. That's what really matters right now. Everything else is secondary. Does that make me less of a father because I'm not thinking about my baby girl right now? No. Does it make me less of a husband because I'm not thinking about Dana right now? No. No, because I'm just in the moment. And I really gain a lot of peace from just keeping myself in whatever moment I am in, because there is a part of my brain that loves to control stuff. And I know there's a lot of you out there that are control freaks, or you like to control things, and when you can't control them, you get upset and you get frustrated. Well, I figured that must be me. I just accepted that must be me. So what if I let go of that control and just know that let the different paths create themselves a little bit. Now, do you have to forge every once in a while and be the pioneer sometime? Yeah, but typically you don't have to be the pioneer. You don't have to be the conquistador. Somebody else has done it. Some of you gain knowledge by reading. Some of you listen to podcasts. Some of you listen to other people. Some of you watch the news. That's why it's feeling like it's letting you down. I think that a lot of times how we have normally gotten our pleasure and our information and gotten through our day is being upset right now. Like, we can't go to the places that we normally went to. We can't watch some of the same shows or channels that we used to watch. We can't get the usual distractions in sports that we used to get. There's so much of our daily routines that have been upset with us that it's forcing us to find that balance or the things that recalibrate us differently.
Sure.
And I think that's what upsets a lot of this balance. But after this is all over, you're still going to find it's still there.
Of course.
All this did is kind of like hyperspaced it, right? Like it brought it faster. It brought on a lot of things much faster. But at the end of the day, when you wake up, there's certain feelings that your body has, and there's certain routines that you do. Just like you do that routine, that's how you set up a day of comfortable feelings and comfortable emotions and balance, is in that routine. If you don't do something physically that breaks the routine that you're normally doing, then your emotions are going to follow the physical nature that you do everything already, because it's already attached. There's certain behaviors that you have that just already have attached emotions attached to them. So you probably have this, like if you're one of those that get all anxiety ridden as soon as you wake up in the morning, well, you've already attached, I wake up in the day and boom, all the thoughts come to your head and you're racing thoughts and blah, blah, blah. Well, if you don't have a way to calm those down, like if you don't have a shower routine where you just get in the shower and just let them go, then you don't have that. If you don't have the Corona Killer 5000 like I have in the backyard, where I get my Corona Killer 5000, there it goes. The jacuzzi does it all. You have to find something physically that allows your brain to just be like, what moment am I in right now? What am I really feeling right now?
Yeah.
Not what I fear that I'm feeling. The sky's never falling from eternity. I don't know. I've heard the sky is falling our entire lives, right? But
yeah, pretty much.
The Chicken Little story, I believe that Chicken Little story. You can't run around saying the sky's falling. It's just not.
No.
It never has been. So I'm not worried about locusts. I'm not worried about planets colliding, and I'm not worried about, zombies. The zombie apocalypse. I'm just not.
Yeah, well, I think that right there, that particular point, goes back to the whole, stop thinking of what should be and start recognizing what is. Because that gets us into so much trouble, man. We have this idea, that's the first truth, right? Like the first truth in the four truths. The first one is pain is a part of life. And that's such a hard thing for us to follow, man. Like, we can wrap our heads around it, right? If I break it down to anybody, any normal, sane person that I break it down to, they all immediately say, yeah, of course, that's obvious.
Sure. Sure.
But when you're living in it, it's so hard for you to respond that way,
Right.
because that's just, we wake up and we have this idea in our head, and I'll call it a box, right? Like we have an idea, we have this little box, and in this box is how our entire day should go, right? I should get up at this time. I'm gonna have this to eat. I'm gonna flip my light switch. It's gonna turn on. I'm gonna put my feet down. There's gonna be a floor there. My AC is gonna feel kind of way. I'm gonna go take a shower. I turn the faucet. The water's gonna come out. And I'm gonna get in my car, and the car's gonna start. I'm gonna drive to work, and I'm not gonna get by any stoplights. Nobody's gonna cut me off. I'm gonna walk in the door. I'm gonna see, my boss, and they're gonna say hi to me, and they're gonna acknowledge me. When I'm at, we have all these little things, these expectations throughout the day of what we think should happen, and then the problem is
Yep.
when it doesn't align, when life just
Right.
laughs at you and is like, "Oh, that's nice," but
Right.
there is no box. I'm gonna do whatever the hell I want, and you're gonna deal with it. And so when life does that, and these little fires, instead of just accepting that there was never a box to begin with,
Right.
instead we try to go put out these fires, right? Like, well, why didn't this happen? Well, this shouldn't have happened. And it takes so much energy to fight all those little fires. And when you
Yes.
put one out, two or three are going to pop up. And so it's this endless, like, tiring cycle of putting out all these fires that were really never there to begin with. Like, you started the fires by having all these expectations. I'm not saying that I'm going to walk out right now and go in like when we get done here, I've got to go run to the store. And I'm not telling you that in my mind, I'm anticipating my truck starting and driving where I got to go, and the store still being there. Like, I anticipate all these things, but I'm fully aware that they might not be. Like, I don't really have any say so in that, right? Like, I hope for the worst, plan for, or I hope for the best, plan for the worst. So I hope that everything goes the way that would be most conducive to me successfully accomplishing all my tasks. However, if anything in that chain breaks, I'm not going to lose my mind because I knew it was never supposed to be that way in the first place. I was just banking, I was hedging my bet, right? Like, based upon the odds, the store I'm going to is going to still be there today. I feel pretty good about those odds. I think it's going to still be there. However, maybe it's closed. Maybe it caught on fire. I don't know. But to the idea that it has to be there, it's just bullshit. Right? We have to accept that. Like, this idea of what life should be is just wrong, man. Life doesn't care. Life is always right. Right? Whatever happened was meant to happen. None of this, well, if I did it, but you didn't. Right? Like, this is the way it went. This is the way it was supposed to go. It's your responses that you can control. How do I respond to it? How do I accept it or not? How do I pivot from now? What do I do with it? That's what you can control. You can't control the thing, and that's what causes us so much trouble. Is walking just this, and it starts the second we wake up, man. The
Yeah.
second we wake up, we're
Oh yeah.
automatically thinking
100%.
these are all the things that should happen today. This
Well,
is how my spouse should talk to me. This is what time my alarm should go off. This is how my dog should do. We immediately start with that, and we're setting ourselves up for disappointment the second we wake up. Go ahead,
yeah,
man.
that's the masturbation that
Yeah, we did a
talk
show on that.
about.
Yeah,
You're just masturbating.
yeah,
Everything must be this way, or else you're
yeah.
gonna freak out. And yeah, okay, but
Good luck.
yeah, it's just gonna be more frustrating than peaceful.
If you learn how
And
to if you learn how to do that, please let me know because I've never learned how to control life. That's not something I've learned how to do yet. So if somebody can figure that out, by all means, let me know your secret because I'd love to hear it.
and that's the thing, really. I mean, look, there's a lot of things to be disappointed about, but at the end of the day, it's like, what are you really going to do about it? Like, what am I really going to do about it? Like when I'm sitting, here's what Dana says a lot. She'll see me, be really comfortable with me, like not having my shirt off or being nude, and she'll be like, it's amazing to be a guy. You guys are just so comfortable and so free with it. And first of all, I'd like to say, well, what other guy do you know that does this? No, no, no. But I'll be like, well, I guess because I guess I really just don't care. I know that I'm not perfect. I know that my body has these things, right? So what is it going to do me to feel shamed or to feel,
Right.
anything about it? It's just what it is, baby. And I want you to feel just as comfortable about your body as that I'm comfortable about my body. And I'm just as comfortable with my shortcomings as you are with your shortcomings. If you got skinny arms or if you're, fat, pudgy, skinny, tall, whatever. Who gives a shit?
Right.
You know, I mean, it is what it is. What am I really going to do about it? Because if I really cared, I would do something about it, Trinity. But apparently, I don't really care. So if I'm not going to care enough to actually do something about it, then why am I going to care and just sit here and masturbate myself to death?
Right.
Screw it. I'm just going to embrace it a little bit, and I'm going to be like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I got, I'm just a little imperfect, um, and that's okay. And that's if we're going anywhere in this culture of today, we're getting to a place where we're teaching a lot more if it's okay than it's not okay.
Right.
I think we'll get there. I
Hopefully,
mean,
that's the
regardless,
yeah.
even though the pendulum swang real far right now, I think it'll eventually come back to a place where it says it's all right. There's no perfect anything.
Right.
Uh, including you, and I did have that brain too, Maynard. I had that brain when I'd wake up in the morning, brrr, speedy thoughts. But that's why physically I had to put in place something physically that would interrupt that. Because if you don't do it physically, you're not going to you can't you can't fight brain power with brain power because it has the upper hand. It has the inside track. So the
Exactly.
disorder or the learned behavior is ingrained. So the only way to stop it or change it is to do something physically that forces you to then feel or think differently. That's the only thing I've ever found to be useful.
Yeah. Well, and the key is also being aware, right? Like aware of being mindful of your feeling tone.
Wow. Are we
And,
still on the air?
yeah, I think so.
Oh, okay.
On my end, we are.
Oh,
So for me, it's also being aware of your feeling tone, right? Like being aware of the moments that you deem something positive, negative, or neutral, right? Like for example, much like everybody, when all the stuff that we're going through at the moment, and I'll limit it to the top three, I think, which would be the politics, the COVID, and the rioting or the protesting, rioting, whatever you want to call it. Those three things, right? So when they all first kind of cracked off, I was all in. I was like, yo, this is a major moment in our history. Like I'm trying to pay attention to see what was
right.
going on. And so I was
Right.
very aware of it, and I was trying to get all the facts. I was trying to understand just what was happening. I wasn't really formulating opinions as much as I was just trying to be informed. But over time, I started to notice that I cared more about opinions than I was about facts at one point. Right? I felt myself emotionally invested in certain outcomes, and it was firing me up a little bit. And so I was aware of that. I was aware that, oh, wait a minute, I'm starting to get kind of attached to the certain outcomes, and so I stopped watching news for a little bit. Because I think we even had a few shows where I was like, man, I have no clue, because I felt myself. I was no longer just a passive watcher. I was now actively looking for certain things, and I was getting hyped up. I was watching videos. I was getting pissed off about certain things, and so I had to be aware of that moment where my fear or my desires or my should be's were starting to kind of rear up a little bit.
Right.
And instead of succumbing to them, I was like, oh, I see what you're doing. Not going to work. And so I was like, all right, I know how to fix this. I just took a pause. I just backed away from some of the media and some of the news and stuff. I didn't pay attention to it. Matter of fact, I watched my first news broadcast in at least a month, probably 3 or 4 days ago, because I just wanted. All right, I said, okay, I'm good. Like I've gotten some of that out of my system. Now it's time to kind of be informed again. So I turned on the TV. I just wanted to hear where we're at with the kind of cases and stuff, just so I'm aware, right? Because I got little kids, I got a wife, like I got all these things, so I can't just be a hermit. I do have to be aware of things, but I didn't do that until I knew it wasn't going to affect my inner peace. And the only way I knew it was affecting my inner peace is because I was aware of my emotional state. I was
Right.
aware of my feeling tone. We, if you're already in the middle of it, it's too late, right? You got to start to be aware of it when it's bubbling up. When you can start to feel like, wait a minute, I'm no longer passive in this. Now I'm starting to get angry. I'm starting to get emotional about it. I'm starting to get too attached to a specific outcome. Be aware when those first start to come and pivot from there. Don't wait until you're like, throwing things across the room to start to realize, oh, I'm angry. Like you got to recognize your feeling tone early on and why. Like, why am I so attached to this? What's going on here?
Hmm.
And I think for me, that helps me when it comes to this fear-based stuff. That helps keep my inner peace, because when I start to see it, I just immediately draw it back in. And I think we
Yeah.
all need to do more of that, because I think too many people are unaware of their mental state at that moment, their emotional state,
Right.
and I think that they get so caught up in certain things, and they get caught up in these debates. They get caught up in the right and wrong aspect of it, and before they realize it, they're saying and doing things that's not. It's kind of like out of their character, right? Like they're arguing with people. They're saying things. Maybe they're defriending. I've seen friendships that people have had for like 20, 30 years ending over like trivial things. And I think that that's what's happening is they're getting so caught up and they're reacting that they don't realize until after they've already said what they said or did what they did, like, oh, wait a minute, I was really angry about that. And at that point, for a lot of people, it feels almost too late. It's not, of course, but they feel like it is, and then there's no coming back from it.
Yeah. Well, you also have to be honest in your approach, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you got to be honest with yourselves, because it's almost like if your child comes up to you, right? Let's say Skylar, you said Skylar turned 16, right? All right. So
Today.
Skylar comes up and you said, Dad, can I borrow the car? And you go, you laugh, and you
Well, she
go,
didn't have a
no.
license right now, so yeah.
I'm just saying, you say no, and then if she would like get friggin' really angry and start breaking things and throwing things and yelling and making the whole night miserable, that would be questionable, because then you'd say, well, was that really an honest question of can I borrow the car, or did you come to me and say, Dad, let me borrow the car, or else I'm going, or no, let me borrow the car, or I'm going to throw a fit, because that's really what you said. You
Mm-hmm.
didn't ask a question, because if you asked a question, you would accept a yes or a no. In other words, if you're going honest into your day, you would accept the good and the bad. But if you're going into the day, no, this can only be a good day if this and this and this and this and this happen, then you're not being honest with yourself. You're not being honest that life doesn't go that way, and therefore you're not allowing yourself an opportunity to have a good day, because you're putting a bunch of conditions upon it. Now, what is it that you have in your life that's so damn meaningful where conditions are okay? Does your wife love you conditionally or unconditionally? Do your children love you conditionally or unconditionally?
Your
Um,
dog.
do you love things conditionally or unconditionally? So if you're going to go into life with conditions, there's nothing in your life that you value that you do that with. No, you go into it unconditionally, because the things that are most valuable to you, you could give a shit whether those conditions are ever met. You're going to love it anyway. Well, embrace this life anyway. That's the mindset that you go into life. That kind of honesty. You go into the day with that kind of honesty. The good, the bad, and the ugly, bring it on. It is what it is. I'll deal with you. I'll navigate. I've navigated horrible situations. I've navigated good situations. But the key is that at least I am fortunate enough to be navigating the damn situation. Because every time I start feeling sorry for myself, I use my dead people, and I have dead people. A lot of us have a lot of dead people, and so I live for them. They don't have the opportunity today. I think about the person that just died an hour ago and said, "Man, here I am complaining about this moment I'm having right now." But I bet you somewhere someone would want one more hour of life, just one more hour to make a phone call or to say something to somebody or to write something down. Just one more hour. And here I am throwing away my hour, frustrated, angry, and bitter. And I can't allow myself to do it. See, my philosophy doesn't allow me to do that, which in turn, my spirituality doesn't allow me to do that.
Yeah, no, it's funny you bring that up. Actually, we're getting close to time, so I'll just make this comment and then let you do your little wrap up. But it's funny you should say that because a lot of times, depending on what day was that subject was going to be that day, when I was doing a group, when we start talking about happiness and things of that nature, I would have this little thing where I would go through and I would ask everybody what makes them happy. I would just go one by one, like, well, what makes you happy? And of course, I would always get the natural list of, family, friends, dogs, sex, that kind of stuff. There's always one smart ass in the corner, like weed. But overall, they were all kind of the same answers for the most part. And then they would come to me and they would say, well, what makes you happy? And I could literally watch their heads. They would say, well, what makes you happy? I was like, I just am. Like, I don't really need any of that stuff. I am happy. And I think you just said it kind of beautifully, and that is, I don't put conditions on it. I'm not foolish enough to think that I can control everything. Other words, I'm not saying, give me this or else I won't be happy. Because what I would say to them, when they would say family, I was like, okay, but family is impermanent, right? Because family passes away, family moves away, whatever. So you tell me, if your family died, you'd never ever be happy again for the rest of your life? That's impossible. Like, no. Or somebody's like, hey, one person said guitar, playing guitar makes them happy. I was like, well, so you're telling me that if you could never play guitar again, you would never be happy again? Like that's what you require? And to me, that always felt a little pompous, right? Like a little, like to think that you can control life enough to say that if my conditions aren't met, that I'm just not going to be happy.
Right, right.
Well, you don't have that kind of control, man. Like
No,
if you think you have that kind of control, then you're going to be an awfully upset person your entire life. And sadly, when it comes to life, it's usually ironic, right? That's usually how life works. Is the things
right,
that
right,
you think are the most important, life has a tendency of ripping those away from you and teaching you that they weren't that important to begin with. And so if you go around saying like, "Hey, well, without guitar, never," well, then you might have a horrific accident. And you can't play guitar anymore. Now what? Like that's how life works. Life is mean sometimes when you look at it in those terms, or life is just life. Life is doing what it's going to do. You're along for the ride. And
no,
so if you put conditions, you're going to be awfully upset sometimes. So I think it's interesting that you said that because that was always my stance was I just am. Do I get joy and pleasure from having my friends and my family and things? Of course I do. But that's not indicative of my happiness. I'm always
right.
happy, man. I choose. That's a choice that I make every day of my life to be happy.
Yeah.
Now my level of joy and my level of pleasure fluctuates day to day. Shit, it fluctuates hour to hour sometimes. But my overall happiness, that never changes at all. So we only got a few more minutes left, man. So I'll go ahead and let you say any final words you got.
All right. Yeah, it was reminding me of I'm reminded of when I was a little kid and we'd be in Juarez, and there was this guy, and I don't know if you ever saw him, Maynard, but he would paint with his feet. I think like every inner city has a guy that paints with his feet with no arms. He has no arms, paints with his feet, and paints beautifully. I mean, I can't even color inside the lines, Trinity, with my two hands, and this guy's painting with his feet. And I never forget images like that, because it's like amazing how what can cripple one person and paralyze one person from ever moving forward or accepting life the way it is, you watch someone else that just surpasses that and just dominates it like a champ. Um, just don't put conditions on your life to be happy. There are no conditions that you're ever going to set forth that that cannot be tested or cannot change. And then what's going to happen? I don't want anything to ever happen to my children, but I've watched how many people have I talked to that lost their children? How many people do I have in my Rolodex of my cell phone that have lost their children? Is it a condition of theirs that their children cannot die before them or else they will not be happy? I mean, it's brutal to watch people with that kind of pain move forward on with their life and challenge it. So I'm never going to pretend to know what that level of pain is like or how to process through it other than just be here for them. And I think there's a lot of stories like that. So some people hearing this today may challenge some of the things we say because you're dealing with that kind of pain. And you're like, well, that all sounds well and good, fellas, but you guys don't know this. Well, we have our stories too, but we're just not sharing those as openly right now. We're just not getting into those stories right now. It's not that time right now. But um, everybody has one. The key is to enjoy your life. Like here's I like to enjoy my life as if I just got off the death row. I learned that trick a long time ago when I had a federal contract, and I used to counsel people that would come off of a federal prison sentence, knowing that I earned a federal prison sentence and never took one, never had one. And so I vowed to myself that I want to enjoy life the way I hear some of them talk about it. I mean, after being incarcerated for so long, like this one guy, Trinity, that I counseled, he had like 20 years in prison, right? And then he got released. And the way he talked about sunlight, the way he talked about just sitting outside on his front porch and just watching, and the little things like that, I said, man, I want to embrace life like I just got off a death row. That was my goal from that point forward. Was like that was my little mantra in my head that whenever I start, playing around in my head, I want to get to the point that point where I feel like I'm embracing it as if I thought I was never going to experience it again. But other than that, fear is just a thing, man. Ain't nothing but a thing. Fear just prevents you. It stops you. It paralyzes you. It freezes you up. It does all that stuff. But you know what beats fear? Time. Even time beats fear. Nothing can beat time. And if you practice just a little bit of digging into that fear, processing through that fear, eventually time will assist you in that process and you will beat it. You will be victorious. That's all I got to say.
Right on. Well put, man. Yeah, I mean, I obviously agree with all of that. We are living in interesting times right now, and I think that these are great times for us to look inward and grow, man. I really do. I'm a big fan of teaching moments, and I think this is a massive teaching moment for all of us. So I would just follow that up, I guess, with some tips. Once again, for those of you who watch the show for a while, we try to come up with some tips at the end, just some action tips to help kind of apply everything that we just talked about here. So today, I would say the first tip I got is truly understand that fear typically comes from a place of worrying about losing something you have or not getting what you want. And so be aware of that. When you're saying or doing something and you're responding to something, ask yourself, am I coming from a place of fear? Am I coming from a place of worrying about losing something or worrying about not getting what I want? And if you are, then my second step is to let that come and let that go. Meaning, don't let that dictate your behavior or your actions. Try not to let your fear override your love, your compassion, your empathy for yourself and everybody else around you. Don't let that fear creep in and make decisions for you, because oftentimes you're going to find that those decisions aren't really conducive to your happiness. And then the third one is kind of a simple but not easy one, and that is strive for inner peace, man. Inner peace is I cannot stress it enough. Nothing on this planet can come close to the way inner peace feels. And when you've got it, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. You know, in my spiritual journey, I would come up with all these things that I wanted, but the one thing I never realized that I wanted so desperately until I got it was peace. And when I got it, I realized, holy crap, I want to keep this forever. And the way you get that is through finding some sort of spiritual journey, whatever that is for you, however you define it. But spend some time growing spiritually, and you'll notice that that inner peace will come. And the more inner peace you have, the less susceptible you are to fear, because you're no longer dictating everything based upon these certain conditions. You know deep down you're going to be good regardless. And when you know you're going to be good regardless, it's very hard to make that person afraid of anything. Because I'm not afraid to lose what I have, and I'm not afraid to not get what I want, because I'm good regardless. I don't have those conditions. So that's all we got for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you share this or follow us on YouTube and all the different podcast platforms. Believe it or not, those things do help us. That's all we got. Be sure to stick around here for a few minutes if you want. I'm sure we'll have some interesting tidbits to discuss. We'll answer some more questions. But that's all we got for today. So now that you know better, do better. Peace. Are you still here? What are you doing? I told you, go do better.